Welcome to A Lunch with Biggie, a podcast about small business and creatives sharing their stories and inspiring you. My guest today is part of a duo that started with wanting to create small batch handmade leather goods and has evolved into multiple stores producing Florida-made leather, grooming, and gifts, all made in Florida and all showing that Orlando never sucked. Please welcome the talented Seth Daniels of Freehand Goods. What's going on, Seth?
Not much. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. It's always, I know you guys are always busy, so I appreciate taking a little lunch break with me today.
Oh, of course.
So I guess my first question right off the bat is, since it's around lunchtime, what is your go-to sandwich lunch?
It's a tough one because I did have one, and they unfortunately stopped making it, but it was at La Femme de Fromage.
Okay.
Right here in the East End Market.
Yep.
She used to have a sandwich called the Chocolate Elvis.
The Chocolate Elvis?
Yeah.
What was in the Chocolate Elvis?
So it was, a grilled cheese idea type setting. But it was chocolate, bananas, bacon, and then instead of peanut butter, which is the classic Elvis sandwich, peanut butter and bananas, she used this Norwegian cheese called Gjetost. That was technically cheese, but it tasted like peanut butter.
Really?
It was really wild, very, very complex. And then you have grilled cheese, smash it all down, everything melts together, and that was like mind-blowing.
That sounds amazing.
It was really, really, really good, but it no longer exists, unfortunately.
So what is it now that you can't have that?
I feel like I'm going to get like 50-50 support or flack for this, but I love the Publix Thanksgiving sub.
Okay.
It's like a leftover sub that they do with like the chopped up turkey and walnuts and cranberry.
I usually, if I ever order that, I usually end up buying using leftover stuffing or I've actually bought stovetop, and I've actually made it just because I'm like, I feels like that's what's missing.
Yeah.
It's either that or like mashed potatoes or something that and misses some of that. So no, I totally get that. So tell people a little bit about Freehand Goods. If they don't know what it is, tell folks a little bit about it.
Sure. You definitely had a very apt and concise description of us. It's Jacob and I, my business partner, making things we like: leather goods, grooming products, lots of fun, designs for t-shirts and artwork based, just fun little goodies.
Yeah.
And again, as you mentioned, we're definitely very driven by the fact that Jacob and I are both Orlando born and raised.
Awesome.
Been here our whole lives.
That's awesome.
And I think that really comes across in a lot of our things.
Yeah. No, I think so. It does. I think it does as well. So how did the two of you guys meet?
We had a mutual friend who put us in contact because Jacob was looking to have some leather goods made for his store that he used to have, a retail store off Park Avenue called Outfitters Ave. And like I said, we had a mutual friend who told him about me. We got in contact, and I made a very small batch, maybe 6, I think, things for his store. But, being handmade leather goods are at a decent price point. But because they sold out so quickly, he suggested we attempt to maybe start our own thing, which we did. And we started with an old, like World War II
1978 military trainer. Yeah.
Something like that. I think it might have even been older than that because it had only 2 wheels. It was really weird. You had to like balance it on his truck. And so I would make the stuff at home pretty much on the weekends, and then he would take it out and go to events. Because during the week he still had his shop and worked there, and I was actually a barber. So I still had to do that during the week. Yeah. And we were very fortunate to actually do a month-long weekend pop-up here in the parking lot at East End Market. And after that, John Rife actually offered us the spot that we are in, which was probably the best possible thing that could have ever happened to us as a business.
That's incredible. The fact so a month. So was it basically a month? Did you take a month off, or did Jacob take a month off in order to kind of man it and be kind of like a little pop-up in here?
No, because it was a month long, but it was only on the weekends.
Oh, only on the weekends.
Saturday and Sunday for like 8 hours a day, but for an entire month. East End used to do that a little bit, but now they more or less replaced it with the food trucks. Yeah. But that was pretty much where it really started taking off.
That's crazy. And then tell me a little bit about, because I know that and that was one of the things that I researched was like, well, I guess let's rewind first. How did you get involved with doing leather work? Because obviously I know, like you said, you were a barber. So like where did that come from? Like, was that, where did you learn how to do leather work? Because I mean, that's obviously not something that everyone learns how to do.
That's actually an easy one to answer. I started doing leather work because I wanted to make myself a motorcycle seat, basically.
Okay.
Me and my buddies sort of come from the chopper world, and I had always really liked these hand-tooled, intricate seats that I had seen, but they're super expensive, thousands of dollars, and I'd always been pretty good with my hands. I grew up in a woodworking family, so I thought I could probably do that. And I actually found this antique leathercraft kit on eBay Antiques. I bought it for like $200, but it actually had all the parts and everything in, all the tools, hammer, little scrap of leather, and I taught myself from that basically. And then I found like 2 other really old leather crafting books also on eBay, and I taught myself from that because at that point there was no leather on YouTube, there was no instruction, there wasn't this sort of like renaissance that leather crafting is having right now.
Yeah.
So there was nowhere to learn it, because that was actually now, oh gosh, almost 18 years ago. So I've been doing leather work for a long time, well before freehand, but I not mostly only did custom work. You know, whatever anyone wanted, I'd pretty much make, and it usually involved more of the hand tooling that I don't do a whole lot of anymore, just because it is so time consuming.
Yeah.
But I've been doing it for a long time. Never really got much of anywhere with it, but I love doing it, and I made enough money to buy some equipment, sewing machines and whatnot, and I'm just very thankfully kept it up.
I was gonna say, I'm like, it definitely led to something, because it obviously led to you guys now having 2 stores.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. What's very interesting is the fact that, like, how was that conversation with you and Jacob after doing the pop-up? Because you were doing weekends. I mean, either you must have just been either selling out of stuff and constantly trying to create things, but like, how was that conversation? Because you're now going from, hey, we both have, like, I have, Jacob's got a shop, you have your own, totally different industry and your own job. What was that conversation like to go, holy crap, we have like this a great opportunity inside of East End, and we can actually be a part of this, which obviously the concept of East End, if you want to kind of give a little bit of a concept, but at least from my understanding, was originally it was supposed to be kind of like a small space to be able to give people an opportunity to open small businesses. But you guys have been here for now a little bit over 5 years.
Yep.
So how is that conversation with you and Jacob, like, to kind of make that decision of, we're going to take the plunge and we're going to own a store?
It was definitely stressful, but more so exciting. It happened pretty much just like you said. Every day here that we were popped up, almost everything was gone. So I would have to basically that same day stay up all night and make a bunch of stuff as much as I could to, drive down here and bring to Jacob. And once we got offered that spot, that was the sort of do or die moment, because obviously you have to commit to it to have something like a brick and mortar store. It's no longer just a hobby. And over a couple of beers, Jacob and I discussed that, and he asked if I would want to be business partners with him, and exactly how much time I would be able to devote to something like being in a store.
Yeah.
Because he did want me to be the face of the company, because I'm a little more used to being sort of in the in the spotlight. I've been a musician my whole life, so it comes sort of naturally to me. But I was very, very fortunate at the time. I had a partner who did well and was willing to basically support me, because the way I did it was I would work the first half of the day in the barbershop, and then the second half of the day I would come here and take over for Jacob, who had been here for the first half, doing half days basically, and then all day Saturday and Sunday I would be manning the store here in East End, open and close. And almost the same thing that happened as with when we were popped up. We just kept selling through everything so quickly. We couldn't keep up with it. The store was almost constantly empty. So that was when, probably maybe 2 weeks after we opened, the decision had to be made of, I don't think I can be a barber anymore. I got to do this, because this had also, the store here in East End had become my workshop. So I brought all my equipment and everything, somehow crammed it into this tiny little space. So that was the only place I could do any work anymore. So to work that much, I would have to be here all the time.
Correct.
And it was scary, but again, I was fortunate enough to have that support system in place at the time. And I took that dive, and man, it's still surreal to me how much it has paid off.
Yeah.
To have been that brave.
Was that like a gut thing, like where you're like, because like it was like, hey, I really love this and I could see something like this, and obviously you're seeing outcomes because things are selling out, so obviously people, that helps quite a bit, obviously the demand for it. But I mean, I can't imagine like having to make that decision. You're like, well, crap, I've been a barber for like 14, 15 years, and all of a sudden now I'm going to be going and doing this full time. How was that kind of thought process? Like that, I mean, there's definitely got to be some kind of gut check or something inside of you going, I think I'm ready.
It was honestly about 50-50. Like you said, that feeling in my gut, like I just know this is going to work. I feel like I was made to be doing this. And also the other half of it was the evidence, like you said, like the fact that it was clearly working. It still didn't make it, per se easy to just drop my career.
Correct. I can imagine.
But man, I'll tell you, I was at a point where I was really, really ready for a change like that. Just having been in the world of hair for so long, between managing salons and barbering and being an educator, almost 20 years in that industry. And I was just ready for something different. And I really only ever had this creative outlet as just that, an outlet. Not as an actual career, I guess. I can call it now.
What at the time, what was like the most popular things that you guys were selling, and are they still the same popular items that are constantly being sold? Now that are as popular 5 years, 5 years in.
Yes and no. It's a little difficult to compare because when we opened here in East End, you would probably have laughed if you saw how little we had.
Okay.
We had. I think it was like 3 leather wallets and a belt, and then like 4 shirt designs and maybe 5 grooming products, and that was literally it. We had almost anything, and the only thing we sold was stuff that I made.
Yeah.
Or Jacob. He had always been making the candles from the beginning, so we had a couple candles too, and we used to actually print all our own shirts too in the shop, cutting out like the linoleum blocks and then roller ball printing them in the shop, but that didn't last very long.
I was gonna say there's only so much time in the day that you can kind of do that. How long does it take you to do a wallet or like your keychain thing or anything like that? Like what's the usual time frame, just to give someone an idea of like how long leatherwork? And obviously you're become now, you do it so much, it's got to be way faster than where you were 5 years ago. So if you want to kind of give like an idea of like, hey, when I first started, this is what it took me. Now it takes me this long.
Sure. So when you're starting out and you're just by yourself, you don't have help the way I do, thankfully have now. It can definitely be a time-consuming process, especially if you tend to be a perfectionist the way I do. You're really, really concerned with how something's going to turn out. And there are a lot of little steps that all have to go perfectly when you're hand making, I'm assuming anything, definitely leather goods. I would say one standard bifold wallet, when I first started, probably take me about 4 or 5 hours. And that was, cutting every single part by hand, just with a little knife, and, burnishing all the edges by hand, painting all the edges by hand. At that point, I was still dyeing all my leather myself, so also doing that. And there's a lot of dry time involved with all of these steps as far as edge painting and leather dyeing and all that. At this point right now, if it were still just me doing it, I could probably finish a whole wallet in about an hour.
Okay.
And again, that's, 16, 17 years.
Yeah, I was going to say,
practice.
I mean, obviously there's an advantage to that, but that's why I was kind of curious, like, of where it is. Cause I mean, obviously there's a certain level of, as you went from doing it occasionally on like weekends and overnights to now it's like a constant. So obviously you're constantly producing things, and now you have a team, which obviously you would expect. I think you have like a staff of 10 now. or something
Yeah,
like that
it's wild.
within your group. So I know that definitely makes it very interesting for you when you how you kind of handle those things. So besides the leather goods, I know you guys do your own grooming stuff. You guys do obviously the apparel. You guys do, like you mentioned, Jacob and the candles and all of that. So like, why is it so important for you guys to do everything? For the majority of the parts, almost everything that's here, you guys have created or built or done. So why is it so important for you guys to do handmade, made locally products?
Honestly, the biggest is just that it's fun. And then simultaneously, very thankfully, the social mindset, however many years ago now, finally took a bit of a turn, and people started wanting that. They wanted to support locally. They wanted artisan-made goods and food and entertainment, and that seems to be almost the majority mindset now, which is frankly the only reason someone like me can do what I do now.
Yeah.
Another part of it too was that we had always told ourselves that should it ever work out the way we dreamed, which it clearly has, that we wanted to also be able to be a stepping stool for other artists, who maybe didn't have the luck that we had or could devote the time or let alone afford a brick and mortar store of their own. And we would curate, other artists, other handmade things, to be that stepping stone for them, because it is so hard to get started when it's just you by yourself. And so obviously then at that point, that would mean we were always going to have the handmade goods and the locally made. And it kind of harkens back to just loving Orlando. Mm-hmm. And everything about Orlando is so much more creative and fun and exciting now than it was, when I was, say, in middle school or something.
Yeah, no, totally understand that. What so for anyone, like if anyone's never seen it or gone to Freehand Goods and their website, like obviously leather goods are amazing. Your products are fantastic. I love the branding, the apparel, the aesthetics of it. Where does the inspiration from a lot of these designs come from? And then I'm also kind of curious because you were also very fortunate because you have someone like super, super talented. I absolutely love everything that she does, V Steiner. So I kind of want to know, I could totally fangirl for her because she's amazing. But I'm curious on like, how did you guys meet? And how did that relationship develop? And then how does that go into the idea of the aesthetics or the branding of your brand?
That was another very serendipitous moment. For a while, we were doing a lot of out of city, I guess,
like
shows,
pop-ups
and farmers markets, things like that. And strangely, we had found that we were incredibly popular in the St. Pete, Tampa Bay area. So we were going out there, or Jacob was, doing shows almost every weekend, because we all just kept doing so well. And that is where V Steiner originates. Mm-hmm. And she also had a booth set up at one of the shows that we did, and said how much she loved our stuff, and we had already known who she was because she's an incredible artist. Mm-hmm. And it started out with hey, maybe do a little collaboration, a design or two, and we'll make some T-shirts. And boy, did people love that. Yep. And so just kept doing more and more collaborations, and then we were still working with other artists for our T-shirt designs. And then little by little, they would drop off to go pursue their own thing. And we just really, really liked the way everything kept coming out, between our, goofball ideas and Veronica's amazing ability. Mm-hmm. It really, really seemed to be sort of like, this is us.
It's like a great blend. It is an absolute blend. I'm not going to lie. I get very jealous when I see things come up. One of the reasons why I'll say it out loud and I'll put it in the universe, because I told Jacob before, I'm like, I'd love to do some kind of collab with like you guys and get to work with her, because you guys do a hell of a job. Like I purposely make it a point whenever I'm selling and I see someone wearing one of your things to tell them like, oh, I absolutely love it. I'm glad it, I'm like, great shop. And I always I'm always praising you guys when I see stuff. So you guys definitely do definitely great stuff. So I absolutely love it. But yeah, I was always kind of curious on how that kind of materialized. And it's amazing how some of those things happen. Truly. When you get when you get a good blend. because then it just kind of everything just seems easy from there, so, like almost a little too easy sometimes. But it's just hey, you run with it, right?
That's exactly what it is. And that's what made us think like, okay, we should definitely stick with this because this is very easy and it keeps being easy.
Yeah.
And she's just incredible to work with. We can tell her like the goofiest things, and within an hour she'll turn around the art to us. It's amazing to just see her work and to work with her in general. And it's always perfect.
Yeah, and of course, you appreciate that as obviously as being a creative as well, to be able to see that someone be able to kind of take that vision and be able to make something happen.
Absolutely, I appreciate and envy it because I can do a lot of things, but I can't draw or paint.
Amen to that.
Definitely not the way she can.
Yeah, for sure. So I know besides your own products, and you've mentioned it before, you guys do a lot of a lot of other smaller brands and stuff like that. I also saw that there is a very big emphasis on, I think you even called it like kind of like almost a subset, like the 50. And I believe is that at both locations or one of your locations, or both locations kind of have that same kind of, and then tell people a little bit about what your concept of the 50 is.
Sure. The 50 does only exist at the Hourglass location.
That's what I thought.
Mostly just for lack of space.
Yep.
But what we wanted to do was curate, decent sized group of goods and items and artwork and various other things that were all 100% the entire process U.S. made, all based right in the States. And it was sort of difficult because there's a certain caliber of good that we want to be representing and have in our stores. And there's a lot of stuff out there, maybe not a lot of it quite up to that par, but also surprisingly a lot of U.S. based companies utilizing overseas labor or good supplies, anything like that.
Yeah.
And over the years we had a lot of people ask like about fully U.S. based or made stuff, and so that was where that came out. And when we curate those things, we kind of try to find goods that seem like they could almost be freehand because like the vibe is kind of the same. Even the branding can be kind of similar, and so then almost visually even it just makes sense for it to be there.
It fits in the store.
And we really like finding brands that maybe have a similar story to us. There's one or two dudes or a couple buddies starting something almost as a joke and somehow it worked, and we love supporting others that know the struggle the way we do.
No, you gotta appreciate the struggle. I totally get that. So you guys have two storefronts, like you mentioned. You have one in the East End. You have the one in the Hourglass. I know Jacob also has the Neighbors, which is also located in East End. Obviously, there's tons of folks that probably come into you guys and kind of, or brands that probably come to you guys and kind of be like, hey, I'm a small owner and I want to sell my stuff in here or whatever. So I'm kind of curious. I always like to have, especially since I want to be able to inspire people and maybe have them be able to learn a little bit, like what's some advice or some tips that you would give someone if they were to approach a business about wanting to actually do, sell their product and stuff like that. Like, what are some things that you're like, man, this one time, give us, if you have any examples or any tips or advice that you can give someone for approaching a store. Not saying exactly, I'm not telling people to go to Freehand after this, but I'm just saying, like, if they were to want to, what would be some things that you would recommend that they would know or should have or be able to provide a store when they go and approach them?
For sure. I think to me, one of the most important things is that you hone your craft. Unfortunately, a lot of times I do see a lot of people who are almost overexcited about, the creating of a brand, the making a business out of their passion, but maybe haven't honed their craft to the level that really is required. And even just beyond quality, just you have to have what you do nailed down because you have to make a lot of it. That would be the second most important thing. You have to create systems to be able to supply the demand that something like a retail store is going to ask of you. And along with that also comes wholesale pricing. Yep. Usually there are plenty of places you can do consignment and sell it at whatever you would normally sell it at, and then the store takes a percentage. Yeah. But if it's not that, they're more than likely going to be wanting to buy in some sort of bulk, even if it's only 6 or 10. So you got to have that kind of pricing structure ready. MOQs, which are minimum order quantities. Like, oh, if you get this, minimum is 6 of those for, to make it worth my time.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, at least for me, because I've had people over the years come into the store and sort of try to do a pitch like that for me, or they're doing it for like their daughter or someone.
Yeah.
Just don't be an a-hole.
That's pretty good.
There's a surprising amount of people out there who are incredibly cocksure like that. And I don't know if they don't know that they're talking to the owner or what, because I'm usually pretty unassuming when I'm in the stores. But just weird negative energy, like just talk to people, get to know them, have a conversation with them, let them get to know you, because if they can stand behind you and like your personality, then that speaks worlds for your products as well.
Mm-hmm. No, I totally agree with that. You represent your brand, so kind of how you do it. So I totally get that. What do you think has been the toughest part about running 2 stores?
Very, very specifically, not being at both of them at all times.
Yeah.
For Jacob and I, it's one of the most difficult things to, not turn your back on, but physically walk away from something that you created,
mm-hmm.
and hope and assume that it's getting treated the same way that you would as if you were there. In that regard, we have been very fortunate to have found the staff that we have. They represent the brand amazingly. We're all basically a family, so they're just as proud of it,
correct,
as we are. And we'd like to bring our employees into the production in any aspect as much as we can, so they can have that little bit of pride.
Yeah, have that feel like they're part of it. So
absolutely,
yeah, no, it makes total sense. What's something that you guys didn't realize, having a storefront and stuff like that maybe you in the beginning you're like, oh man, this did not even dawn on me to have, especially in the beginning part of it, because I can imagine like thankfully there's 2 of you, because some people, like perfect example, myself, like I'm by myself, so I mean I would literally have to live here if I was if I had a spot, unless I hired someone. But like, what's something like that you kind of didn't realize until you actually started having a shop, that you guys realized?
I'm sure Jacob already knew this, but for me it was a lot of the legal side of it, all the different permitting and the licensures you had to have and tax stuff and all that, because I'm not the businessman. I'm the first to say that. I'm just the maker. So to me, that was a big world, because it seemed like it was a lot of things you had to do, a lot of red tape, for something as small as this is.
Yeah.
But that's the reality of business. Beyond that, I know that's a lot of people probably already know that kind of stuff. I would honestly say exactly the kind of stock you have to keep, to not have your shelves go barren, because once your shelves are bare, it's not a good look. People don't like that. They tend to kind of stay away, because they think, whatever they're thinking in their head, oh, they're going out of business.
Yeah, I was going to say, they going out of business. They're not looking at, no one ever looks at it the positive, like, oh, wow, they sold out of everything. They're not looking at it that way. They're like, oh, they're not doing well.
Yeah, they're not reordering or whatever. That was a shocker, especially for something like T-shirts. It's especially after almost 6 years, it's absurd how many T-shirts we go through.
Yeah.
And I would have never thought in the beginning that we would ever have to think about always having that that kind of number of items on hand, mm-hmm. of anything.
What advice would you give someone for wanting to start something?
I would go back again to the honing of the craft. That's such a huge one. Just because there are tons of people doing everything, especially these days. As much as people think like, oh, I'm the only leather worker in Central Florida. No, I specifically know at least 6 other ones that have something similar to Freehand. Thankfully, none of us do exactly the same things. There's not really, a competitive atmosphere there. But there are a lot of us, and so for the most part, if you do something like that, you have to assume that there are a lot of you out there as well. Mm-hmm. So you got to be on the top of your game. That's going to be one of the biggest things, because if you're going to stores trying to get your things sold there, there's a good chance that somebody else is doing the same thing, and they're not going to want competing products, so they're going to pick
the best
they assume or deem to be the best one. So that's just always going to be what it comes down to me, honestly. And the other thing is serendipity obviously played a big part in our success.
So do you think, I'm always kind of curious about with that, because I think there's a certain area or idea of serendipity and luck, but I also think that like you create it, right? Like, I mean, and it's kind of one of those where like I feel like when a lot of people be like, oh man, you guys got lucky, everything fell into place. Did it fall into place, or did you guys make it because of all the hard work and everything that comes with it? Because obviously there's a whole layer of things that you guys created to get to that point to make that luck happen. But yeah, I mean, I do agree. Sometimes you do need that like kind of serendipitous moment to kind of like catch fire. But at the same time, like I also think that there's got to be, there's a reason why your favorite rock band or your favorite, musician or singer, they like, oh my God, like they're amazing. But in reality, they've been performing for 15 years and you just didn't know who they were. And they finally got their moment and got hot. And now they're famous, but they've been doing it forever. That's why a lot of times I jokingly will say that when a band gets their first album, it's usually like the best because it's like all their years of all the music is like that. I mean, it's like finally an album with like every great song.
It's not really their first album.
It's not their first album. Exactly. It's like the best of the best from all those years. So I'm kind of curious, like, I mean, so yes, like I agree with you on that, but I kind of interject because like I was like, there's you guys make killer product and there's a reason why the quality of it is, which obviously it plays a part of that success.
No, you absolutely hit the nail on the head with that, because I was going to say that serendipitous nature of things, being in the right place at the right time, that only happened because we were out there as much as we could be. So as painful as it is to say this, because I feel like everyone says this, but you just got to be on your grind.
I mean, and I'll
try to be in as many places as you can, because you never know whose eyes are going to be there to get on you, and that be the one that
exactly. I mean, heck,
did it.
I give you guys props. You guys have 2 stores. And yet I know that you guys occasionally will still do a pop-up in Tampa or somewhere else. And I'm just like, why are they even doing that? They have 2 stores but that's how it is. I mean, that's part of the game that you got to do.
Yeah. And especially specifically that, one of the sort of further out dreams has always been to actually open a store somewhere in that St. Pete, Tampa area, because it's been pretty much proven to us that it would work.
That they love it.
We had a lot of repeat customers, even specific people, returning every time we would do a pop-up just to get more stuff because they loved it so much. But that might not be for a little while.
It's okay. I mean, you guys,
but it helps to maintain those relationships. Like
definitely.
You said,
definitely. For sure. We both love Orlando. Obviously yes. I was not born and raised here, but I definitely love our city. And I love the fact that you guys do as well. What are some things that you love most about our city?
Like I mentioned earlier, I really love just where it's gone, how it's matured, how it's grown.
Yeah.
Having been here quite literally my entire life, outside of a short 1-year stint in South Florida, it's crazy to think about, even visually, just seeing the streets and the buildings that I did when I was a kid, because I know exactly where all of them are. I remember all of them. Not only how much they've physically grown, the city's grown so wildly in size, but again, just that like awesome positive maturity, especially along the lines of creativity and of the arts in general, and the support.
Yeah.
The outpouring of support that we got from the locals of Orlando is the only reason we are where we are. Well, one of the biggest reasons, I'm sure. Yeah. There are plenty of other factors, but if that love wasn't there, then who knows how long it would have lasted or wouldn't have. And that's honestly my favorite thing. And because that is the case, there are so many options now. There's almost nothing you can't find. You can eat whatever you want, and any cuisine you can think of, it probably exists somewhere.
Yeah.
In the however many zip codes actually encompass Orlando. Yeah. And just that mindset creates a really positive sort of energy and vibe in the city in general. Everybody sort of gets along because we're all on our own sort of hustle.
No, I agree.
We're all trying to make it without, having to slave 9 to 5.
Amen to that, man. Amen to that. Where can people follow, shop, and support, and obviously come to the shops?
Right on. So as we mentioned, right here in the East End Market where we're recording this, downstairs next to Lineage. That's usually how people manage to find us. Our Hourglass location is right on the corner of Curryford and Bumby. It's actually in the Foxtail and Tamalico Plaza, which is another awesome place to be. Outside of that, we have a full web store on our website. We sell almost everything that we do in the stores on the site. You can definitely follow us on Instagram, on Facebook, and as of recently, TikTok.
Freehand Goods. Everything's under Freehand Goods.
That's it, at Freehand Goods. Nice and easy.
For sure, man. Well, Seth, thank you so much for taking time to come chat with me. I've been wanting to chat with you guys. I absolutely love everything that you guys are doing, and no, I just love seeing you guys, and I love what you guys have created. So I definitely appreciate it. That's our show for today. Thank you so much for Seth Daniels of Freehand Goods for being on and having lunch with me. Definitely make sure to check them out online. By all means, they love, I know I say this in every single episode, take pictures of their stuff, tag people if you've been to the store, support all my guests, because obviously they're all small businesses trying to create things. But definitely, if you enjoyed it, definitely check them out online at Freehand Goods. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe. If you want to support my brand, Deli Fresh Threads, obviously I'm always down for some sandwich selfies.
Do it.
Make sure to do some shopping and tell your friends, of course. Thank you. Until next time, keep eating sandwiches and follow your passion. Thank you so much, everyone.